30th of March, 1943. Pearl Harbor, territory of Hawaii. Captain Albert Mumma stands in a warehouse stacked floor to ceiling with wooden crates marked with stenciled warnings. The crates hold 5-inch shells for destroyers. Somewhere across the Pacific, 3,000 miles away in another depot, sit the silk powder bags needed to fire them. Ships wait. Battles stall. Men die because bullets and bombs cannot reach the guns. Mumma is 47 years old, a career ordnance officer who has spent 2 decades managing the flow of explosives through the Navy's supply system. Now he faces a problem that threatens to paralyze the entire Pacific campaign. Ammunition exists in abundance, but it sits uselessly separated across an ocean. The United States Navy in early 1943 operates on a supply doctrine designed for a different war. Ammunition moves from inland factories to coastal depots, then loads aboard whatever cargo ship has space, bound for forward bases where it transfers again to combatant vessels. The system assumes time, assumes safety, assumes that supply lines remain unbroken. The Pacific War assumes none of these things. Japanese submarines hunt American cargo ships. Typhoons scatter convoys. Island bases lack the infrastructure to store and sort millions of pounds of explosives. Most critically, the tempo of naval combat has changed. Task forces no longer return to port between engagements. They operate for months at sea, burning through ammunition faster than any pre-war planner imagined. A battleship firing support for a Marine landing can expend more shells in one day than it once used in a year of peacetime exercises. Mumma receives his assignment from Admiral William Calhoun, Chief of the Bureau of Ordnance. The directive is brief: solve the ammunition distribution problem within 6 months. No additional ships, no additional budget. Use what exists. Mumma begins by mapping the current system. He charts every ammunition depot from San Francisco to Brisbane. He tracks every cargo vessel carrying ordnance. He interviews gunnery officers returning from combat. The pattern becomes clear. Ammunition travels as ballast, mixed cargo, whatever space remains after food and fuel load aboard. Shells separate from powder charges because regulations forbid storing them together on standard cargo ships. Safety rules written after decades of peacetime accidents now create wartime paralysis. A destroyer arriving at Espiritu Santo might find 10,000 rounds of ammunition waiting, but no powder, or powder with no shells. Or the wrong caliber entirely. Ships wait days, sometimes weeks, for the correct combination to arrive. The solution Mumma envisions requires violating every safety protocol the Navy has established over 40 years. He proposes converting standard cargo vessels into dedicated ammunition ships, vessels that carry nothing but explosives and the powder to fire them. The ships must store shells and charges in the same hull, separated only by bulkheads and ventilation systems. They must carry every caliber the fleet uses, organized so a destroyer, cruiser, or battleship can pull alongside and receive exactly what it needs within hours. The concept terrifies Navy safety officers. An ammunition ship represents the most dangerous vessel afloat. One spark, one shell fragment, one mistake could detonate thousands of tons of explosives. The blast would vaporize the ship and everything within a mile radius. Mumma spends April 1943 building his case. He calculates that a single ammunition ship, properly loaded, can supply an entire task force for a month of sustained operations. He demonstrates that current methods waste more ammunition through misallocation and deterioration than any probable accident would destroy. He argues that the risk of explosion is smaller than the certainty of defeat if ammunition cannot reach the guns. Most importantly, he identifies the ships. The Maritime Commission has contracted dozens of standard cargo vessels, C2 and C3 types, built quickly in American shipyards. They are slow, unarmored, expendable. Perfect for conversion. On the 12th of May, 1943, Admiral Ernest King, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Fleet, approves the ammunition ship program. Mumma receives authorization to convert 12 cargo vessels immediately, with more to follow if the concept proves viable. He has 4 months before typhoon season begins. He has no existing design, no trained crews, no established procedures. He has only the certainty that without these ships, the Pacific offensive will grind to a halt. Mumma establishes his headquarters at Mare Island Naval Shipyard in Vallejo, California. The first vessel assigned for conversion is the SS Rangel, a C2 cargo ship fresh from a Seattle shipyard. She is 459 feet long, 63 feet wide, with 5 cargo holds and a top speed of 15 knots. Mumma walks her empty holds with a team of ordnance engineers and damage control specialists. They must redesign the interior to carry ammunition safely while maintaining the ability to transfer it quickly at sea. Every decision balances risk against utility. The first modification is ventilation. Ammunition generates heat as it ages. Powder charges deteriorate in humidity. The holds must maintain constant airflow to prevent temperature spikes and moisture accumulation. Mumma orders the installation of forced air ventilation systems in every hold, with backup fans powered by auxiliary generators. The ventilation must continue even if the main power fails, even if the ship is under attack. Even if fires rage on deck, the fans become the ship's most critical system. The second modification is segregation. Shells and powder charges cannot touch. Mumma divides each hold with steel bulkheads, creating separate compartments. Shells stack on one side, powder bags on the other. The bulkheads are not armor. They will not stop an explosion. They exist only to prevent accidental contact, to ensure that a dropped shell cannot land on a powder bag. The segregation is psychological as much as physical, a way to let sailors work surrounded by explosives without paralysis. The third modification is organization. An ammunition ship must carry every type of ordnance the fleet uses. 5-inch destroyer rounds, 6-inch cruiser shells, 14-inch and 16-inch battleship projectiles, anti-aircraft ammunition, depth charges, aerial bombs, small arms cartridges. Each type must be stored so it can be located and transferred quickly. Mumma creates a color coding system. Red stencils for battleship ammunition, blue for cruisers, yellow for destroyers, white for aircraft ordnance. Every crate, every pallet, every shell receives a colored mark indicating its purpose. Sailors must be able to identify ammunition in darkness, in smoke, in the chaos of combat resupply. The fourth modification is handling equipment. Ammunition is heavy. A 16-inch shell weighs 2,700 pounds. Its powder charge adds another 660 pounds. Moving this weight from hold to deck to transfer boat to receiving ship requires cranes, winches, cargo nets, and men who know how to use them without dropping anything. Mumma installs additional booms on every mast. He adds electric winches with manual backups. He designs padded cargo nets that cradle shells without allowing them to bang against each other. He writes procedures for every step of the transfer process, from opening the hold to releasing the load on the receiving ship's deck. By the end of June 1943, the SS Rangel completes conversion and becomes USS Rangel, designated I-12, the Navy's first purpose-built ammunition ship. Mumma personally supervises her first loading at the Naval Ammunition Depot in Concord, California. The process takes 6 days. Trucks arrive from inland factories carrying shells manufactured in Pennsylvania, powder bags from Tennessee, fuses from Connecticut. Stevedores and sailors work in teams, moving each crate from truck to dock to hold. Mumma walks the holds every evening, checking stowage, checking ventilation, checking that the color codes are correct. He signs the loading manifest on the 4th of July, 1943. The Rangel carries 6,800 tons of ammunition, enough to supply a battleship division for 3 months of combat operations. The test comes immediately. USS Rangel departs San Francisco on the 8th of July, bound for Pearl Harbor with a destroyer escort. The voyage takes 5 days. Mumma does not sail with her. He remains at Mare Island, overseeing the conversion of the next ship, but he receives daily radio reports. The Rangel's ventilation systems function correctly. The segregated holds maintain stable temperatures. The crew, trained in a 2-week crash course, follows procedures without incident. On the 13th of July, the Rangel anchors in Pearl Harbor and begins her first operational transfer. The receiving ship is USS North Carolina, a battleship preparing to join Task Force 38 for operations in the Solomon Islands. The North Carolina needs 16-inch shells and powder charges. Under the old system, she would have waited for cargo ships to arrive from the West Coast, then spent days sorting through mixed loads to find the correct ammunition. With the Rangel, the process takes 18 hours. The ammunition ship anchors 500 yards from the battleship. A cargo net transfers between them, suspended from booms. Sailors on the Rangel load shells into the net. A winch lifts it, swings it over the water, lowers it onto the North Carolina's deck. The battleship's crew unloads the shells and sends the net back. The cycle repeats every 12 minutes. By dawn on the 14th of July, the North Carolina has received 400 rounds of 16-inch ammunition and the powder to fire them. She departs Pearl Harbor that afternoon, fully supplied, ready for combat. Mumma receives the report on the 15th of July. The system works. He accelerates the conversion program. By September 1943, 8 ammunition ships are operational. By December, 15. Each ship follows the same design, the same color coding, the same procedures. Crews train at Mare Island for 2 weeks before their first voyage, learning to handle explosives in every condition. Mumma writes a manual, Ammunition Ship Operations, that becomes the standard text. It covers everything from ventilation maintenance to fire suppression to what to do if a shell breaks loose during a typhoon. The manual's most important section is the shortest. If fire reaches the magazine, abandon ship immediately. Do not attempt to fight the fire. The ship is lost. Save the crew. The ammunition ships begin deploying forward in early 1944. They do not travel with combat task forces. They are too slow, too vulnerable, too valuable. Instead, they anchor at forward bases just behind the combat zone. Ulithi Atoll in the Caroline Islands becomes the primary ammunition anchorage. The atoll is a natural harbor, large enough to hold dozens of ships, remote enough to be relatively safe from Japanese air attack. Ammunition ships anchor in Ulithi's lagoon, waiting for combatant vessels to arrive for resupply. The system creates a mobile magazine, a floating depot that moves forward as the battle line advances. Mumma visits Ulithi in February 1944, flying from Pearl Harbor on a Navy transport. He spends a week observing ammunition transfers. The ships he designed now operate as a system. A destroyer arrives, low on 5-inch ammunition after a shore bombardment. It pulls alongside an ammunition ship, receives 200 rounds in 4 hours and departs. A cruiser arrives, needs 6-inch shells and anti-aircraft rounds. It receives both from the same ammunition ship in a single transfer. A battleship arrives, nearly empty after supporting a Marine landing. It spends a full day alongside an ammunition ship, taking on 16-inch shells, 14-inch shells for its secondary batteries, and 5-inch anti-aircraft ammunition. By nightfall, the battleship is fully supplied and ready to return to combat. The efficiency transforms Pacific operations. Before ammunition ships, a task force had to withdraw to Pearl Harbor or another major base every 4 to 6 weeks to resupply. The withdrawal took the force out of combat for 2 weeks, 1 week traveling, 1 week loading ammunition and returning. With ammunition ships at Ulithi, a task force resupplies in 2 days without leaving the forward area. The operational tempo doubles. Ships that once fought for a month, then rested for a month, now fight continuously for 3 months before returning to Pearl Harbor for maintenance. The Japanese Navy, already outnumbered, now faces an American fleet that never stops. The system's first major test comes during the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944. The engagement, later called the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, is the largest carrier battle of the Pacific War. American fighters shoot down more than 600 Japanese aircraft over 2 days. The carriers expend enormous quantities of ammunition, anti-aircraft shells, aircraft ordnance, fuel. When the battle ends on the 20th of June, Task Force 58 is critically low on supplies. Under the old system, the task force would have withdrawn to Pearl Harbor, a voyage of more than 4,000 miles. Instead, it steams to Eniwetok Atoll, where 3 ammunition ships wait. The resupply takes 3 days. On the 24th of June, Task Force 58 resumes operations, fully supplied, ready to continue the offensive toward the Philippines. Mumma does not witness the battle. He remains at Mare Island, managing the conversion program. By mid-1944, the program has expanded beyond his initial 12 ships. The Navy now operates 27 ammunition ships, with 15 more under conversion. The demand is insatiable. Every island invasion, every carrier strike, every shore bombardment consumes ammunition faster than pre-war planners believed possible. The ships Mumma designed are the only reason the offensive continues. In August 1944, Mumma receives a new assignment. The Navy is planning invasions of Iwo Jima and Okinawa, operations that will require unprecedented levels of naval gunfire support. Battleships and cruisers will bombard the islands for days before Marines land, firing thousands of shells to destroy Japanese fortifications. The ammunition requirement exceeds anything previously attempted. Mumma must ensure that enough ammunition ships are available, properly loaded, and positioned to support the operations. He begins planning in September 1944. Iwo Jima is a small island, only 8 square miles, but Japanese forces have fortified it with tunnels, bunkers, and artillery positions. The preliminary bombardment plan calls for battleships to fire more than 20,000 shells in 3 days. Mumma calculates that this requires 4 ammunition ships dedicated solely to the Iwo Jima operation, positioned at Saipan, 600 miles from the target. The ships must carry primarily battleship ammunition, 14-inch and 16-inch shells, plus the powder charges to fire them. They must also carry replacement ammunition for cruisers and destroyers, which will provide continuous fire support during the Marine landing. Mumma personally supervises the loading of the Iwo Jima ammunition ships in December 1944. The ships are USS Shasta, USS Mauna Loa, USS Vesuvius, and USS Firedrake. Each ship takes 8 days to load. The shells arrive by rail from ammunition depots across the western United States. Powder charges come from factories in Tennessee and Missouri. Fuses arrive from Connecticut. Every component must match. A 16-inch shell requires a specific powder charge and a specific fuse. Mixing components from different production batches can cause misfires or, worse, premature detonations in the gun barrel. Mumma checks every load, verifying that shells, powder, and fuses are compatible. The 4 ammunition ships depart San Francisco in early January 1945, traveling in convoy with a destroyer escort. They arrive at Saipan on the 25th of January. The Iwo Jima invasion is scheduled for the 19th of February. The ammunition ships have 3 weeks to prepare. Mumma has flown to Saipan ahead of them. He meets with Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner, commander of the amphibious force, and Admiral William Blandy, commander of the bombardment group. They review the fire support plan. The bombardment will begin on the 16th of February, 3 days before the landing. Battleships will fire at maximum rate, targeting Japanese artillery positions, bunkers, and troop concentrations. The bombardment will continue during the landing and for weeks afterward as Marines fight inland. Mumma explains the resupply system. The 4 ammunition ships will anchor at Saipan. As battleships and cruisers expend their ammunition, they will withdraw from Iwo Jima, steam to Saipan, resupply, and return. The cycle will repeat continuously. Each battleship carries approximately 1,500 rounds of main battery ammunition. At maximum rate of fire, a battleship can expend this in 2 days. Therefore, each battleship must resupply every 48 hours. The ammunition ships must be ready to transfer at any time, day or night, regardless of weather. The bombardment begins on the 16th of February, 1945. Mumma watches from Saipan as the battleships open fire. The sound carries across 600 miles of ocean, a distant rumble like thunder. The first battleship arrives for resupply on the 18th of February. It is USS Nevada, a veteran of Pearl Harbor, now mounting 14-inch guns. The Nevada has fired 900 rounds in 2 days. It pulls alongside USS Shasta at dawn. The transfer begins immediately. Sailors on the Shasta load shells into cargo nets. Winches lift them, swing them across the water, lower them onto the Nevada's deck. The process continues for 16 hours. By midnight, the Nevada has received 800 rounds of 14-inch ammunition and the powder to fire them. It departs Saipan at 200 on the 19th of February, returning to Iwo Jima as the first Marines wade ashore. The resupply cycle continues for 36 days. Battleships and cruisers rotate through Saipan, taking on ammunition, returning to the bombardment. The 4 ammunition ships transfer continuously. Crews work 12-hour shifts, loading shells, operating winches, checking stowage. The work is exhausting and dangerous. Shells weigh hundreds of pounds. Cargo nets swing in the wind. Mistakes can drop a shell into the water or, worse, onto a sailor's head. But the crews maintain the pace. They transfer more than 50,000 shells in 5 weeks, enough to supply the entire Iwo Jima operation. Mumma remains at Saipan throughout the operation. He monitors every transfer, checking that procedures are followed, that ventilation systems function, that crews remain alert despite exhaustion. On the 26th of March, 1945, the last Japanese resistance on Iwo Jima ends. The island is secure. The ammunition ships have supplied every shell fired in the longest sustained naval bombardment of the Pacific War. Not one ammunition ship suffered an accident. Not one shell was lost to mishandling. The system Mumma designed worked exactly as intended. The Okinawa operation, beginning in April 1945, is larger. The island is 460 square miles, heavily fortified, defended by more than 100,000 Japanese troops. The preliminary bombardment lasts 7 days. The ground campaign lasts 82 days. Naval gunfire support continues throughout, with battleships, cruisers, and destroyers firing at Japanese positions every day. The ammunition requirement dwarfs Iwo Jima. Mumma positions 8 ammunition ships at Kuramaredo, a small island group 15 miles from Okinawa. The ships anchor in the harbor, protected by anti-aircraft guns and fighter patrols. They resupply the bombardment force continuously from the 1st of April until the end of June. The Okinawa operation proves the final validation of Mumma's system. The ammunition ships transfer more than 100,000 shells in 3 months. They operate through typhoons, through kamikaze attacks, through the most intense combat of the Pacific War. On the 6th of April, a kamikaze aircraft crashes into USS Rangel, the first ammunition ship Mumma converted. The plane hits the forward deck, starting a fire near the No. 1 hold. The hold contains 5-inch ammunition. If the fire reaches it, the ship will explode. The crew fights the fire for 40 minutes, using foam and water to keep it away from the hold. They succeed. The fire is extinguished before it reaches the ammunition. The Rangel survives, repairs the damage, and resumes transfers 3 days later. Mumma learns of the Rangel's survival on the 8th of April. He is back at Mare Island, overseeing the conversion of additional ammunition ships. The Navy now operates 43 ammunition ships, with more planned. The program Mumma started in March 1943 has become a permanent part of the fleet. Ammunition ships are no longer an experiment. They are essential. The Pacific War cannot be fought without them. In July 1945, Mumma receives orders to plan ammunition support for Operation Downfall, the proposed invasion of Japan. The operation is scheduled for November 1945, with a preliminary bombardment that will make Okinawa look small. The plan calls for every battleship in the Pacific Fleet to bombard the Japanese coast for 2 weeks before the landing. The ammunition requirement is staggering, more than 500,000 shells. Mumma calculates that this requires 20 ammunition ships, positioned at Okinawa and other forward bases. He begins organizing the loading schedules, the transfer procedures, the logistics of moving that much explosive material across the Pacific. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945 make Operation Downfall unnecessary. Japan surrenders on the 15th of August. The war ends. Mumma's planning for the invasion becomes irrelevant, but the ammunition ships he created remain. They have transformed naval logistics. The concept of a mobile magazine, a floating depot that moves with the fleet, is now standard doctrine. The U.S. Navy will operate ammunition ships for the next 50 years, through the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Cold War. Every ammunition ship built after 1945 follows the design principles Mumma established in 1943. Segregated holds, forced ventilation, color-coded stowage, trained handling crews. Mumma retires from the Navy in 1947 with the rank of Rear Admiral. He is 51 years old. He has spent 29 years in uniform, most of it managing the unglamorous work of moving explosives from factories to guns. His service record lists no combat commands, no decorations for valor, no dramatic moments. It lists only a series of logistics assignments, culminating in the ammunition ship program. But that program changed the Pacific War. It turned ammunition from a static commodity, locked in depots, into a fluid resource that moved with the fleet. It enabled the sustained naval bombardments that made island invasions possible. It allowed the U.S. Navy to maintain an operational tempo the Japanese could not match. The risk Mumma accepted was real. An ammunition ship is a floating bomb. One mistake, one accident, one enemy hit can destroy it instantly. During the war, 2 ammunition ships were lost. USS Mount Hood exploded at Seedler Harbor on the 10th of November, 1944. The cause was never determined. The explosion killed 359 men and destroyed the ship completely. USS Serpents exploded at Guadalcanal on the 29th of January, 1945, killing 250 men. Again, the cause was unknown. Both ships vanished in seconds, vaporized by the thousands of tons of explosives they carried. Mumma knew this could happen. He knew that every ammunition ship he sent to sea carried the potential for catastrophic loss. He accepted the risk because the alternative was worse. Without ammunition ships, the Pacific offensive would have stalled. Without ammunition ships, more men would have died in prolonged campaigns that could not be supported. The 2 ships lost, and the 600 men killed, were the price of a system that saved thousands of other lives by enabling faster, more decisive operations. Mumma does not speak publicly about the ammunition ship program after his retirement. He settles in Annapolis, Maryland, and works as a consultant for ordnance manufacturers. He dies on the 14th of March, 1967, at the age of 71. His obituary in the Washington Post is 4 paragraphs long. It mentions his naval service, his work in ordnance, his retirement rank. It does not mention ammunition ships. It does not mention Iwo Jima or Okinawa. It does not mention that he solved one of the critical logistics problems of the Pacific War. The ammunition ships he designed continue operating long after his death. The last conventionally armed ammunition ship, USS Flint, decommissions in 1995, 50 years after the end of World War II. By then, the ships have supplied every American naval operation for half a century. They have carried ammunition to Korea, to Vietnam, to the Persian Gulf. They have evolved with technology, adding refrigeration for modern propellants, adding cranes for heavier missiles, adding computers for inventory management. But the basic design remains Mumma's. Segregated holds, forced ventilation, color-coded stowage, trained crews. The principles he established in 1943 prove timeless. The legacy of Mumma's work is not dramatic. It is not the subject of films or popular histories. It does not involve heroic charges or desperate last stands. It is simply this. When American warships needed ammunition, ammunition was there. When battleships bombarded Iwo Jima, they did not run out of shells. When carriers struck Japanese positions, they did not lack bombs. When destroyers screened the fleet, they had depth charges and anti-aircraft rounds. The guns never fell silent for lack of supply. That reliability, that certainty, came from a logistics system one man designed in 4 months in 1943. It came from accepting risk, from violating safety rules written for peacetime, from understanding that war requires different calculations than peace. Mumma made those calculations. He built the system. The system worked. Men lived because of it. That is the measure of his contribution, unglamorous and essential, the kind of work that wins wars without making headlines.